Hello, today we're going to be creating our own buttons with React. So you may be familiar with libraries like Material UI that allow you to pull in their library for buttons, but you may not know that it's actually very easy to style your own buttons with very minimal amount of code. You can see here we have just over 100 lines of code to create all these different types of button examples. We're going to be using React hooks for a toggle component. We're going to style a regular old button here with click functionality. We're going to add in a theme to style that differently. And then we're going to add in a disabled button, a link button, a button toggle, and then we're going to even talk about how to apply that button toggle to tabs. You can check the link in the description for access to this whole sandbox and all these examples we're discussing here. So with that, let's get started. All right, so I am here on a code sandbox, a React code sandbox starter, and I'm ready to add some buttons in here. So first thing, I'm going to just get rid of this line to import the styles.css, and then I'm going to delete all of this markup here. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in a div, and inside of this div, we're going to add a button. So if I say button, close that off, and I just say button. So there you go. So now it appears, and you can see I'm clicking on it, nothing's happening. But if I go in here and I add in the onClick prop, so I say onClick, and I create this function here, we're going to go up here and we're going to create a function. We're just going to say function click me, and we're going to do an alert to the browser, and we're going to say you clicked me. All right. And we're going to copy this handler and add that inside the brackets here. So now we click the button and we get the alert. So now our button is functioning, and we're going to go ahead and style this button. So I like to use styled components to style my HTML elements here. And to do that, we're going to go to our Explorer and we're going to click Add Dependency. We're going to type in styled-components. Click Styled Components. We're going to close that Explorer here. And you should get notified that that was installed, which is there. So now we go ahead up here and we're just going to say import styled from styled-components. So that's how we import it. And now we're going to go down here and we're going to create our styled button. So we're going to say const button equals styled.button. And we're going to use the backtick here, go down here. And inside of this button is where we can add our CSS. So if we say background-color blue, you could see now after we add this button, so we actually have to replace our existing HTML tag with this new React button that we've created, you could see that we have our styles being applied correctly. Awesome. So now this button color is not great, so we're going to use the material palette. So if you go over here to materialpalette.com/colors, you can see here we have a bunch of colors that we could choose from. If you click on one, so let's say I click on indigo, and we're going to click on the 600 here. If I click on 600, it copies it to my clipboard, and then I go back and just paste that on in here. You could see now that we have that indigo color being applied. So next, I'm going to go ahead and add in a white color. So I'm going to say color white, and this is going to change the text color to be white. So that looks great. Now we're still kind of got that native button feel here. So we're just going to add some more styles to make this look a little bit more modern, more a bit like how Material UI has their buttons set up. And first thing we're going to do is add some more padding around this button. So we're going to say padding 5 pixels, 15 pixels. So that's going to increase the padding vertically and then horizontally. So 5 pixels goes vertical and or top and bottom, 15 pixels goes left and right. Next, we're going to add in a border radius. So if we say border radius 5 pixels, that's going to add some rounded edges on the corners of the button there. So that looks awesome. Now we click this, you see we get that outline around that button. We can remove that with the outline prop. So if we say outline 0, the outline attribute, I should say. So we say outline 0, we click that button, you can see the outline's gone. Finally, we're going to add a little bit of a box shadow on that. So we're going to say box shadow, and we're going to say 0 pixels. We're going to go down 2 pixels, 2 pixels, and then we're going to say light gray. So you can see that is very subtle, but it's there. And what that did is it said we want no shadow on the sides, but we want a 2-pixel shadow on the bottom. And then we want that to spread 2 pixels. And we want the color to be the browser's light gray color. So there you go. So that button looks really good. The last thing that I like to do is what Material UI does also, is to uppercase the text. So if you do text transform here and you say uppercase, what that's going to do is that's going to uppercase the text. So no matter what you put in there, the text would be uppercased with CSS. So there you go. So that's our modern button. One more thing. Actually, I can do a lot more. So we're going to say cursor pointer. Let's do this. There we go. All right. So now we have the cursor being changed to a pointer when you click on that. All right. So that's our basic button so far. We're now going to add in some hover attributes here. So we want to darken this button as we hover over it. So Material UI also does that. So to access that hover property, we're going to do &hover. And this is going to allow us to add styles in when we hover over that element. So we're using the &hover pseudo selector from styled components. So if we go over to the Material UI, we selected 700. So we're going to select 800 here. And we're going to go ahead and say background color, that color here inside of the hover. Now let's see if that works. So we hover over it. And there you go. We'll see that we get that color changing. Now to make this a little better, what we're going to do even further is we're going to add a transition property on that background color. So if we say transition ease, that's the transition type, the property we want to transition or animate is the background color. And then we use the duration. So we're going to say 250 milliseconds. And so now when you hover over that button, you see that background color animates really nicely in. So that's really cool. So you could play with this. You can add in a different color. I actually think maybe the 600 would be better. Let's go over here. Did we choose the 600 originally? Let's see. Yes, we did. So let's go ahead and choose the 500 just to get a little bit more of a change when we hover over that. So there we go. So it's a little brighter now. So we hover over it. There we go. So that looks really cool. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of a theme functionality here. So this is going to be a lightweight kind of way to change different themes. So let's say we wanted to make a pink button, but we didn't want to duplicate this functionality that we already have in here. What we're going to do is we're going to just create a theme object here. So we're going to say const theme. We're going to create that object, and then we're going to say blue. And in here, we're going to say default. We're going to paste in that default color that we have here. Make sure you wrap that in a string. And then we're going to say hover. We're going to specify the hover property down here. And then there we go. So that's our theme object for now. We're going to add in a pink theme shortly. So then you might be wondering, well, how do we get this theme inside here? Well, what we're going to do first is specify a default theme for this button. So I'm going to say button.default props, and that's going to be an object. And then in here, we're going to say theme blue. So the theme is going to be a string. It's going to be blue. And then we're going to use that string to access the object property for that theme. And then we're going to get access to our default color and our hover color. So let's go ahead and do that here. You can access the props by saying props. And then we're going to access off the theme, the props.theme. And then that gets us the object, but to get the color, we say .default. So there we go. Next, we can copy this and paste this over here in the background color and change the default to be hover. And now you see we hover over it and we have our blue color being applied. Cool. So now we could pretty much add in a new theme very easily. So let's say we have a pink theme. We want the default color to be a pink color. Shoot on over back to here and we'll go with 500. So copy that. Go down here to the hover and we add in, say, the 800. Click. Go over here. And there we go. So now we have to go all the way back down here to copy this whole div here. And we're going to just wait for that to load. Now we have to actually wrap all of this in a fragment. since we can't render the sibling elements like that. So we add in this template tag here, and it still didn't like that. So the reason being because we didn't close off this div tag here. So now we have our two buttons. They're all being applied. Now we say theme pink. And then just like that, we have our theme working. Okay, next, we're just going to add some margin on the top and bottom of the button just to space it out. So if we go here, we're just going to add margin, and we're going to say 10 pixels, 0 pixels. So that's just going to increase the vertical margin for our example. Your app might need a smaller margin or no margin. Just depends on what you need. All right, so we're going to add in now the ability to add in a disabled button. Now, you can add this prop in now. It is in the standard HTML attributes for button. So if we go here, let's just make a new button here. And we just add in the disabled prop. So this would be the third button. We click on that and you see that we don't get the click handler, whereas we do in the other ones. This is because the disabled prop is disabling that click. Now, if we go up here to our button, we can actually handle that the same way we handle the hover. We can handle that pseudo selector with the & disabled selector. And then in here, what we could do is, as you could see now, the button still has that cursor. So what we could do is say cursor default, and then we can add in an opacity of 0.7. So now you could see the button has slightly different styles. The transition, I think, is still there, but I think that looks good. It looks like it's disabled. So that ought to do it for disabled buttons. Next, we're going to talk about link buttons. So if we go down here and we add in an A tag and we say href to some website, and then we add in a target underscore blank. So then inside of this A tag, we add in a regular button. You notice that we still got that click handler, so we'll have to just remove this click handler here, and then the button will behave as a link button. Great. I'm just going to make this example slightly more clear. So I'm going to say pink theme. I'm going to say disabled, and then I'm going to say link. Okay, so now we're going to add in a button toggle group, and this is just going to allow you to select different buttons and have the other buttons deselect. And so how we're going to do that, first we're going to just create a list of types. So just to manage our data, we're going to create an array, and we're going to call this types. And in here, we're just going to say cash, credit card, Bitcoin. And this way we know what buttons we want to render. We're just going to render based on these types. And we're going to go up here and we're going to import React hooks. So we're going to import useState, which is just going to give us that stateful functionality. And now we go down here and we're just going to create our functional component. So we're going to call this toggle group. So we're going to say function toggle group. And in here, what we're going to do is we're going to initialize a React hook. So we're going to say const active set active equals useState types 0. So when we render this toggle group, the hook will run for the first time and it will initialize our state. It'll initialize the active state to be cache. And then the set active handler will allow us to set a new state on there. So in here, we're going to return a div. This is going to be our wrapper. And in this wrapper, what we're going to do is we are going to map over the types. And in here, we're going to render a button. with the current type. Now we need to actually render this in our app. So we're going to go down here and we're just going to render this over here. Cool. So you can see that works. All right. So now let's talk about how this is going to work. The buttons that are not active need to have a disabled style there, but they can't actually use our previous disabled style or the regular native disabled prop because that would not allow you to click on it, and that would defeat the purpose of making a toggle. It wouldn't allow you to click on it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create our own new button toggle component that's going to extend off of button, but allow us to, by default, have an active prop that is disabled. So, but it's not really disabled. It just has the appearance of being disabled, but you can still click on it, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and create that now. So we're going to say const button toggle equals styled button. So we're extending off of the button. So in here, by default, we're going to have opacity be 0.07, but we want to access a new type of prop, which if we destructure off of that prop, the active prop, and then we render some CSS there if the active is set. So if the active is set, what we're going to do is just say opacity 1. So now let's go ahead and replace our button with our new button toggle component. And now you can see that all of the buttons are now having the appearance of being disabled. So let's go ahead and add in a few props to this. So the first thing we want to do is actually only set the active one. So the active prop. And what we're going to do here is say when the active is equal to the type. So when our current state is equal to the type that we're rendering, we are active. This is true. That goes up here and sets the opacity to 1. So cache is having the appearance of being selected. And then when we have a click handler, so we say on click, we will use the set active. So we'll create a function in here to use the set active hook here to set the current state to be the current type. All right, so let's go ahead and confirm that this works. Awesome. So the button toggle group that we just created is actually very similar to tabs. So we've gone ahead and added in tabs here, and we're just going to explain how the toggle group is similar to tabs, how you can create a new tab here. So basically we started just from scratch here. The tab actually is easier to just make a new component than to try to extend off the button, since the button has the background color applied. We are just starting again from a regular button. We have some extra padding horizontally here so that you can have just some more room if you wanted a longer name. The opacity here is set by default, so we have the appearance of a disabled tab here. And then we have a background color being wiped out, so we're wiping out that button. So if we get rid of these default, or if we get rid of this here, you'll see that they have those native button styles. But if we add in the border and the outline as 0, we are getting rid of that. So it just appears like a tab. When we're active, similar to our button toggle, when we're active, we're going to set that opacity back to 1. But the new thing we're doing is we're adding in a border bottom of 2 pixels solid black. Now we could actually add in some animation here, which we'll show in a second. But before we do that, let's go to the tab group. So tab group, very similar to the toggle group that we added. The tab group is going to do the same thing here with the stateful functionality. Here we have the tab, we have the active, same thing. It's all the same, except we're rendering a tab here instead of the button toggle. And then down here, what we're doing is we're just rendering the current selection. So you could handle this however you want. You could render a different view if you had a active prop that was something different. So that's how the tab functionality works. Here we could render whatever we wanted. So we're just taking that active prop and rendering it here. So we're just saying this is the payment selection. As we change, this gets updated because the active prop here is in scope. Yeah, that's how tabs work. Let's go ahead up here and try and add some animation on this tab. So if we go here and we say transition ease border bottom 250 milliseconds. Let's see if that actually works. So yeah, now you could see as we change tabs, we're getting a little bit of bump here. So I think what we need to do is just specify a hard height of, let's say, 40 pixels. And then as we change, still a little bit here, but actually this is wrong. What you need to do here is just set a default border bottom of 2 pixels solid transparent. And let's see, that should, there we go. So now we have the tab border bottom kind of animating in. It looks really great. And so that's gonna do it for this demo. Again, you can go and check the link for all of these examples and the code sandbox. Thanks.